Hey everybody, today we're talking about Batman the Cult. Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. We're doing more Batman today. This is The Cult, or should I say Dark Knight Rises, or is Dark Knight Rises The Cult? Let's get into it. So this is a book I have never read before, actually. This is a long-time legendary Batman series. Batman the Cult, written by Jim Starlin, art by Bernie Wrightson, colors by Bill Ray. It was pretty good. It's interesting. This is from 1990 is when this was first published. This is a newer collection. There's also like a new deluxe edition out there. I don't know if it was published at the same time. It's got a different DC bullet, obviously. But yeah, I think I don't know that there's anything in the deluxe edition you need to go get per se, but this is one I would recommend you go and search out, whatever version you want to find it in, right? Because this was pretty good. This has a lot of similarities to Dark Knight Rises. Having seen the movie first before I ever read this, that's why I phrased it. Obviously, this came before, so let's rephrase in the proper way. Dark Knight Rises has a lot of similarities to Batman the Cult and takes a lot of inspiration from it. I know my boy Donovan is probably like, what are you talking about? But there is a lot of stuff in Dark Knight Rises that directly comes from this book. Yeah, the villain is different, but so what happens in Dark Knight Rises, right? Bane comes, breaks Batman's back. All right, awesome. Gotham, nobody can get in. All right, cool. It's kind of like No Man's Land. All right, cool. But individual scenes and individual moments that are in Dark Knight Rises come from this book. You have people hiding in the sewers, like Bane's henchmen, which are the henchmen of the Reverend here. What is his damn name? Deacon John Blackfire, right? I think the first time I read a story from him or about him was in Batman Eternal, and I had not read The Cult at the time. Anyway, Deacon Blackfire he's basically like the ringleader of all these crazy homeless people that are in the sewers, right? So what is Bane doing in Dark Knight Rises? He's hiding his people down below in the sewers. Batman is kidnapped. That really doesn't happen, but he is defeated and pretty much hurt very, very badly and has to recuperate himself from what Deacon Blackfire did to him and then come back and fight, and take back his city. And why do I say, like, it's got things of Batman the Cult, like Batman's kind of broken. The Robin here, I believe, is Jason Todd. It's not really clear. He just calls him Robin, and it's not the Tim Drake costume at the time. I don't think Tim Drake was running around as Robin, or he was just starting. So this might be Jason Todd. I think he mostly calls him Robin. But anyway, so Batman kind of goes and gets a grip with himself and comes back in like a giant Batmobile bat truck, which is very much kind of like what we see in Absolute Batman. That Batmobile, ring a bell, anybody? So that's there. And he's going over a bridge, right? So he basically, there's a whole bridge scene where there's a showdown with people on a school bus, and the bridge is blocked off, and they can't go anywhere. And, people are like, get back on the bus, or, fighting for things. I'm trying to find the dang scene. But that's definitely taken from this book. That scene with Joseph Gordon-Levitt as the cop, that scene's pretty much from here. There's a whole lot of stuff. Here you go. The blocking of the bridges with a bunch of gear, that kind of thing. Like the city's taken over. There's a hospital scene in here with James Gordon right here. Sound familiar when Bruce comes back and jumps out the window? That's in here. Whole bunch of little details, little scenes that made up the Dark Knight Rises directly come from this book. So it's pretty fun to read this and be like, oh, that's where that came from. Oh, that's where that came from. The big plots are, Nightfall, Night Quest, and Dark Knight Rises, and No Man's Land a little bit, but a whole lot of the interstitial spacing of that comes from Batman the Cult, and that makes a whole lot of sense right now. On its own, does it make any sense? Did I enjoy it reading it on its own? Not really. I think it was just a little weird how it immediately starts out, and it starts out in media res, which means in the middle of the story, right? And you see Batman, and he's got something going on with him. And it's pretty clear that Batman's going nuts, and Batman's been kidnapped, right? And then you kind of dial back to how he got kidnapped and things like that. or Robin finds him. But it goes on for a couple of books where Batman is kind of under the Deacon's control and been brainwashed because he's been so starved, and he's kind of hallucinating because of whatever in the food that they're giving him, right? And that's kind of the story with all these people under Deacon Blackfire's sway. He kind of puts himself out there as like an immortal, having been in the city for a long time, but in the reality, is that true or not? You'll have to read the story to find out. But like most things Batman, you could probably guess. But it's very violent, though. I'm not overly familiar with Bernie Wrightson, to be honest, so I can't tell you if this is the best Bernie Wrightson artwork or not. I know he is a very lauded and revered artist, and the colors here are definitely something to look at. They're very they're very painterly and watercolored and very garish. Very similar to the original Killing Joke colors, I would say, or Watchmen and things like that. Lots of purples, lots of reds, lots of like lime greens and blues and things like that. Very kind of like picking a color tone for the page and then using that tone throughout the page instead of individually coloring it realistically, more like what you see in books nowadays. I'm not saying that's bad. Definitely it's an artistic choice. I think I do like it here. It adds to the surrealness of what Batman's going through and definitely adds to the mood of where you're at in the story. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's the Jim Starlin thing. Like I don't know if it feels overly written, but it just feels like we're with the cult for too long, and maybe that there wasn't enough setup for what I was looking for out of the story. Like, Batman's immediately in, but it never really feels like there's a threat. You know what I mean? Yeah, Batman's been taken, kidnapped and taken advantage of, however you want to put it, and he's definitely not in control of himself. But is Deacon Blackfire the biggest threat you'll ever face? Like, no. And there's not really like a big physical threat for him to face either. It's more of like the moral one. He's fighting people because of the numbers and things like that. There's too many of them, that kind of thing. So that's interesting to see Batman overcome yet again. But I don't know that that this is a all-time new classic for me in the way that's something like Batman Year 100 for me. That first time I read that book, I was like, this is an instant classic for me. This is awesome. This one, I think maybe because I've seen the movie that used a lot of plot points from it, I was making connections that way as opposed to making connections being like, oh, this is a great story. I can see why they use that thing. I guess if you have not seen that movie, you might enjoy it more than I did, but I was definitely thinking of the movie, and I think that did affect my reading. So, just being honest, being upfront, I think there's stuff too here. There's something to like in here. The artwork, I think, is gorgeous. The painting is definitely of its time. You know what I mean? 1990, this was the best coloring job you could do, is to have your book painted like this, because this is pre-computer coloring. It's gorgeous. Like this double-page spread of Batman in the sewers with all these, I don't think these desiccated corpses, and Robin finding him. Like, that is an image. That is an image right there. It's really like a super cool image, and there's definitely lots of detail. And Bernie Wrightson, I think it came from Swamp Thing in I want to say it was the 80s or 70s. Like, I think it was before, was it before Alan Moore did stuff? I have never read Alan Moore's run, to be honest. But, yeah, he's definitely like a horror-focused artist, Bernie Wrightson. So, I don't know. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just it's very of its time. So if you like really modern anime styled art, this might not be the book for you. But I think there is something very, very cool about it. And if you can go back and read some of the older stuff, from 30 years ago, things like that, you will find something to enjoy here. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Batman the Cult. Let me know if I was way off and this book's an instant classic. Tell me why you love it. Or maybe why you don't like it. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Am I totally off my Dark Knight Rises theory? Let me know down below in the comments, and we'll see you guys next time in the Funny Pages.